This is the story of a flower that sparked a 1944 federal court case, caused a bitter scientific investigation over missing morphine, and created a legal myth that tricks millions of people to this very day. This is the real story of the California poppy, Eschscholzia californica, and yes, I practiced that name a few times before recording this. Long before it was the official state flower of California, 19th century doctors prescribed it as a safer, non-addictive alternative to heavy opiates. By the end of this video, we will separate the real science from the internet folklore and expose why the true history of this plant has been misunderstood for over a century. To understand how a common backyard flower became an alternative to heavy narcotics, we have to look back at the late 1800s. Real American physicians used the California poppy as a substitute for opium and morphine, and that's not internet folklore. It's sitting right there in actual medical textbooks from the era. These physicians belonged to a branch of medicine called Eclectic medicine, a formally organized school of botanical practice founded in 1847, with real institutions like the Eclectic Medical Institute in Cincinnati. These were licensed doctors with their own dispensatories and reference texts, not fringe herbalists. The most important of those reference texts carried the name King's American Dispensatory, rewritten in 1898 by two physicians named Harvey Wicks Felter and John Uri Lloyd. Inside it, they described California poppy as an analgesic and soporific, a pain reliever and a sleep aid, calling it something that worked without the dangers attending opiates, quieting pain and producing a calm sleep. Without the dangers attending opiates. In 1898, that's exactly how two licensed physicians chose to describe it, positioning California poppy as the safer alternative in plain language. Think about that, a gentle pain reliever that would not enslave the person taking it, sitting right on mainstream pharmacy shelves. By the way, if uncovering these hidden layers of nature's history is your thing, hit subscribe now, because timeless nature wisdom is built entirely on recovering forgotten accounts, just like this one. Anyway, here's the detail a lot of retellings get wrong though. Eclectic physicians weren't handing this out to everyone instead of opium. They reached for it specifically when opium was medically indicated for pain, but the patient couldn't tolerate it. Felter and Lloyd argued the whole plant preparation, unlike morphine and other opium poppy derivatives, was non-addictive, safe, and gentle. None of this got invented by eclectic doctors out of nowhere. Centuries earlier, indigenous Californian communities were already putting the plant to medicinal use. The Tongva people called it mecha cha, and used the mashed root for toothaches, applied stem scrapings to newborns' navels, and boiled the plant into a lice-killing salve. Costanoan communities used it the same way for lice. The Cahuilla used the whole plant as a mild sedative for babies, and the Chumash went further still, with evidence they actively cultivated it for food, cosmetic use, and sedation. So why would this plant even work, if it's not actually opium? California poppy belongs to the same plant family as the opium poppy, Papaver, but a different genus, and modern chemistry confirms it contains no morphine at all. What it carries instead are compounds called isoquinoline alkaloids, working on the brain through GABA receptors, the same general pathway involved in calming and sedation, just through a different chemical door than morphine uses. Now, the clinical trials tracking how these receptors react get incredibly technical, and while we are sticking to the lost history today, there's a video that breaks that part down in real depth. I'll drop it in the description box for you to check out right after this one. So why isn't any of this common knowledge? Why did an entire medical tradition built around this plant basically vanish? That's where the story goes next. California poppy itself was never banned, and that's worth saying plainly before going any further. Nobody outlawed the plant. What actually happened is that the entire medical system built around it collapsed out from underneath it. 1910 brought the report that reshaped American medicine, the Flexner Report, commissioned by the Carnegie Foundation and written by Abraham Flexner. It came down hard on what he called sectarian medicine, a category that swept in eclectic medicine and other botanical schools. Criticized for lacking laboratory facilities and rigorous clinical training, he reportedly called eclectic doctors drug mad. The fallout was fast. Between 1910 and 1935, more than half of all medical schools in the United States closed or merged, with 29 closing within just 4 years of the report. The next generation of doctors simply never learned botanical medicine. Nobody banned the knowledge, it just stopped being taught, and an entire category of medical knowledge aged out of the system, alongside the doctors who'd carried it. There's one more complicating factor, and honestly, this is the part of the research that took the longest to track down. In 1888, researchers named Bardet and Adrain claimed California poppy contained trace amounts of morphine, and that claim sat unresolved for decades. It finally got settled almost by accident, through an unrelated legal fight in the early 1940s, when the US government cracked down on cultivation of true opium poppies, grown for poppy seed, in a case known as the California Poppy Rebellion. As part of those proceedings, a government chemist filed a sworn affidavit in 1944, citing the full chemical record on the question, studies running from Reuter in 1869 through Fisher and Tweeden in 1902, every one of which had tested Eschscholzia californica and found no morphine. The 1888 claim had been wrong all along. It just took over 50 years and an unrelated court case to settle it. So here's where this part of the story lands. The plant was never banned. The morphine scare was false, and the tradition that used it clinically got swept away by a regulatory earthquake that had nothing to do with the poppy itself. Today, Health Canada still authorizes a standardized California poppy product as a mild sedative for chronic pain. Proof that somewhere, a government still backs up exactly what those 1898 physicians were arguing. Now let's get to the question most people actually came here for. Is it really illegal to pick? Anyone who's lived in California, or even just visited during poppy season, has probably heard some version of this rule. Don't pick the state flower, it's illegal. Nearly every Californian has absorbed that belief somewhere along the way, and almost nobody can tell you exactly why. Let's settle it. I dug into the actual legal code on this one, and here's the reality. There is no law in California that specifically protects or even names the California poppy. Full stop. No poppy law exists anywhere on the books. What actually exists is a general statute, California Penal Code Section 384A, that makes it illegal to cut, destroy, mutilate, or remove plant material from public land, or from someone else's private land, without permission. The word poppy appears nowhere in it. A poppy, a rosebush, a pine tree, even leaf mold sitting on the surface of public land. The statute treats every single one of these exactly the same way. Violating it carries real consequences too, up to 6 months in jail and a $1,000 fine for a misdemeanor-level offense. But here's the part that actually busts the myth wide open. This law only kicks in on public land, or on private land that isn't yours. Poppies growing in your own yard, or on private land, where the owner's given you permission, those you can pick without breaking a single law. No special exception gets carved out against poppies specifically. They get treated exactly like a dandelion growing on your own lawn. So where did this myth come from? The clearest evidence traces to a local newspaper column from 2006, where the writer admitted his own belief in the myth started in 3rd grade at a school called Alta Heights, when a classmate told him he could go to jail for picking up a broken poppy off the ground. He believed it into adulthood, until a biology professor finally confirmed there's no poppy-specific law at all. That's almost certainly how this myth spreads, through the symbolic weight of the word state flower, rather than any actual statute. California Government Code Section 421 does formally designate the poppy as the state symbol, but that code is purely ceremonial and grants no legal protection whatsoever. A few more layers sit on top of that statute too. State park regulations prohibit picking plants inside parks and reserves to preserve native ecosystems, and Caltrans separately prohibits removing plants from highway rights-of-way. So here's the honest answer to the question in the title. On your own property, or with permission, picking a California poppy breaks no law at all. On public land, or someone else's property without permission, it does, but only because of the same general rule protecting every plant in the state. Given how visually tied this flower is to California's gold-soaked history, you'd expect the gold rush to play a major role in this story. I'll be honest, when I started researching this part, I assumed I'd find a much bigger connection than what's actually out there. James Marshall discovered gold at Sutter's Mill in Coloma, California, on January 24, 1848, and roughly 90,000 people arrived in California in 1849 alone, the so-called 49ers. But search specifically for evidence that miners used, foraged, or sold California poppies during that exact window, and the record goes silent. No documented account exists of miners brewing poppy tea in their camps, and no record ties Gold Rush-era mining destruction directly to poppy habitat loss. What is verified is smaller, but still worth knowing. The California poppy's most rapid period of worldwide spread likely began right at the end of the gold rush, not because miners were using the plant, but because miners heading home often carried poppy seeds back with them as simple garden souvenirs of California. Seeds spread incidentally too, riding in ship ballast and turning up as a contaminant in alfalfa seed shipments, which is part of why California poppy later became naturalized, sometimes invasive, in places like Chile and Australia. The honest version of this story is that the gold rush and the California poppy connect mainly through symbolism and coincidence, layered with this quieter story of seeds traveling home in the pockets of men who came looking for fortune and found, instead, a flower worth bringing back. One more piece of poppy folklore closes out the history here, and this one holds up at its core. California poppies physically open and close depending on conditions, opening in direct sunlight and warmth, closing at night, in cold, in wind, and on overcast days. This is real documented plant behavior, not folklore, though even with the pattern well established, the exact biological mechanism behind it still isn't fully understood. This behavior is why early Spanish settlers in California gave the plant a specific nickname, dormidera, Spanish for the sleepy one, chosen specifically because of its habit of closing up in the evening and on foggy or overcast days. In a loose, informal way, that makes this flower a kind of living weather indicator for as long as people have paid attention to it. We don't have evidence of some formal historical system where people consulted poppies the way they'd consult an almanac, and that's worth saying outright. But the real physiological behavior is there, and so is a centuries-old name proving people noticed it. This carries practical weight today too. The Antelope Valley California Poppy Reserve builds its entire visitor guidance around this exact behavior, recommending visits between 10 a.m. and 3 p.m. on sunny, calm days, since the flowers sit closed during cold mornings, wind, or overcast skies. The sleepy flower the Spanish named centuries ago still dictates exactly when modern tourists should show up. So let's bring this to a full circle. A flower real physicians prescribed as a documented alternative to opium didn't disappear because it failed. It disappeared because the medical tradition behind it got swept aside by a 1910 report that reshaped American education. Nearly every Californian has been told it's illegal to pick, and that's only half true, since no law mentions the poppy by name, just a general rule covering every plant in the state, and on your own property you're free to pick all you want. Its connection to the gold rush is real, but quieter than the legend suggests. Seeds riding home in pockets rather than miners using it as medicine. And it's been telling people about the weather for centuries, simply by opening for the sun and closing everything else out. Doctors trusted this plant once. The law mostly leaves it alone now. It hitched a ride around the world without anyone planning it, and it still closes its petals exactly the way it did when the Spanish first named it. Not opium, not outlawed, just badly misunderstood. If you learned something today, subscribe to Timeless Nature Wisdom for more of these forgotten plant stories, and let us know in the comments if there's another flower you think deserves this same treatment.